Questions about MDM that people want to ask? Graham.
I have a question. I'll ask.
Just on mute now.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah. All right. So this is hypothetical, and you don't have the control over it. But if Apple could change their implementation of profiles. So right now, whenever you install a profile on macOS, I don't know how iOS works, it does the change right there. There's no controlling it afterwards. So if I update something, or if I boot it into recovery mode and started changing things on the file system, MDM doesn't actually have a way to enforce that after the fact. How do you think we could best get that implemented? Is there something you think we could do on the server side to get there without Apple's help? Better question. Do you understand the question?
So are you saying you can install a profile and then you can choose to have it come into application later?
So so I'll give you an example. If you're on 10.12 and you're getting prepped to install 10.13, I'm going to install the Kex profile, and it's going to do the changes right then. And since 10.12 has no idea how to do it, it's just not going to do anything, but it's installed. I upgrade my machine to 10.13. It has the Kex profile installed, and the machine says, hey, it's installed, but I've already done it because it's installed. So your Kex policies don't actually do anything. That's a true statement. And
So that's a question. Yeah. Is there a better way to install Kex policies?
You just install the profile every 5 minutes. And then when your client eventually gets to 10.13, it'll have the profile.
Is this scalable? Up to 10,000? I don't know.
So you're looking for a solution now, or what Apple should do or provide so that...
Anything.
Okay.
Your thoughts?
Well, I know what we do at Simple MDM is, in certain situations, we'll look at what the actual device has installed before pushing on a profile, or we'll modify it based on the OS version or what kind of device it is. That could help, but I mean, still in an upgrade situation, you're going to run into that. I've upgraded, and now there's this gap in time until the next check-in, for instance. I could see there being value in Apple extending profiles to have a apply after this date type scenario, or it'd be amazing to have some sort of like a proc or some sort of evaluation that could occur whether it applies. Implementation-wise, that sounds like it'd be really hairy and unlikely. But
what we did with our MDM was we just periodically send, because for the Kex policy thing, you also need to be either DEP or UAMDM. So you can't just send the profile to any, say, 10.13 machine. It also has to be UAMDM. So we had a Python integration that checks for that with the security info command, I think it is. And if you are user approved or DEP, then send the Kex payload.
Yeah, I think what a lot of this comes back to is that it'd be helpful to have more feedback from the device when certain events occur. Because as the MDM provider, we can implement a lot of this functionality, but we need to know when it happens. And pulling a device every 5 minutes is going to be a really bad experience for everyone.
Yeah, I would think it's actually, it wouldn't be necessarily at an MDM level, but it'd be at like the installer level. Which, yeah, making the Apple installer more intelligent, probably not asking for, a good time, but, it would check the fact that you're making the migration up from a previous OS, and you may have pre-installed things to not have such a bad time once you get to the booted level. That would be kind of probably what you're looking for necessarily. It's like you already put the payloads there, and then when you do the update or the mechanism there, it's saying, hey, we know that this doesn't apply for 10.12, but you put it there. Let's be a bit more, and more particularly for the user-approved kernel extensions, because that's really the only part of your management experience that you definitely need the MDM for, and that you're completely dependent upon. So doing it at the install level would probably be my best guess of the way to handle it.
I would love to see that Apple will integrate a technology that we can query, so they probably could reach out for OS query because it's open source. And then just tie this together with the MDM. So we have something to query to get the state, and then get the event back, and act upon that. That would be a scenario I would love to see.
So there is a profile-less query, but it's returning the profile itself and not actually the state of the machine and what the setting is at.
Yep.
So I think what we've been really liking or trying to request for a while is something kind of like a desired state management, and then really having 3 modes. Enforce always, enforce once, and then it can be changed or nothing. And then the MDM client should be keeping up with that and validating and auditing it, on a regular basis, because at the scale, at the number of devices we have on the server, sending a command profile sample or an install profile sample every 5 minutes is going to, destroy our servers. So, we're keen to not spam the device with commands to work around a limitation like that.
So you're asking for MCX.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like a workgroup manager. We can rebuild next hackathon, rebuild workgroup manager.
Hey,
Make
the
MCX
secure
great
token
again.
bypass off, whatever it's called, key is still in MCX, so they're still going with that.
Any other questions? Go. Victor, what are you doing down here?
So I know Jesse watched the WWDC session on what's coming new in MDM. Could you please enlighten us all in what's coming new in MDM this year?
My notes are over there. So I don't really remember much because it mostly was worthless for me. It had, that's not to say that it wasn't worthless. Oh.
Nice try. Problem solver, that guy.
Over half of it was education and classroom and stuff like that. So not a whole lot of applicability. The tiny little mention that macOS got at the very end was, I don't know, interesting. There's a few new payloads. The most curious thing out of all of that is the install enterprise application command, which there's no details on.
Inline manifest, apparently. You don't, instead of having a manifest plist stored on a server and the command you give is the URL to that plist, you're feeding the plist directly to the command. So that's supposedly more secure. We'll see.
And cert
then there's
pinning.
cert pinning, which we don't know anything about yet.
But none of those are particular. Anyway.
That would be a lot more secure.
I'm still waiting for the bug to be fixed where we can send multiple commands at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
So if we can get there, that'd be great.
That would be fantastic.
Christos, please.
Maybe they just change the command, so they don't have to fix the original.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm really curious about, which I think it's just a rumor, is how binaries might get approved with UAMDM in the future to do some management-y things, which we know even less about. I don't know, just heard a rumor. So that'll be interesting, the next few beta seeds.
Should we have a MDM conference in the future? Yeah.
I don't know, what do you guys think?
Would you guys come?
Hey, come on, you had your
Can
time.
we have some Apple people come?
Well, it's the question, will Apple people come? They kind of canceled the other conference, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody want to know anything? Throw it out there.
Matt?
So what was the last radar that each of you filed?
The one about 2 things at once, not working? I just updated that radar like 5 minutes ago.
What radar?
The sending multiple install application commands. So I had 3 packages, and I just queued them all up, enrolled, and then only the last package installed, but they all responded acknowledged. The one before that, though, we're playing around with a lot of the OS update commands, and one of the ones is install ASAP. So you say I want to install this update as soon as possible, and it just returns idle and does nothing. So that one's pretty good.
Because it's installing, so it's offline.
Yeah, it's all good.
I have a radar I want to file,
Okay.
but I haven't done yet. So the KEX policy database, which tells you the the UA-KEL status of any given KEX, is just a readable SQLite database in 1013, but they've hidden behind SIP now, so you can't go read that. So you have no idea what KEX people are approving themselves. So I would like to file a feature request to get that data out of the OS somehow.
Sounds like a good security effort.
I think the last one I filed was if you have a app restriction, so like whitelist or blacklist in iOS, and you block think it's like the weather app or calculator. The profile's invalid. You can't. There's this one native app that you can't hide or allow. I think it's probably you can't whitelist it. Just falls apart. It's the strangest thing. It started in mid iOS 11, some mid release, and yeah, it's a fun one to debug.
I think it was for something in 10.8. And that was the last one. And then every time I come across something, I do a Google search, and I'm pretty good at that now, and find that someone's already filed one, and I just am like, well, someone already did it, so we should be good, which is not a great way to get anything particularly solved in the great Apple radar a bit there. Yeah, I don't know. Like, my relationship with Apple has been a long one. I really thought that I'd make a career out of managing Xservs and Xserv raids, and I'm here now talking about configuration management. So collectively, though, I guess the whole idea is that some of the bugs that we have that we find as a community are really kind of uniquely specific, and then we have ones that aren't, that are kind of big breakers of things. And maybe collectively what we need to do as a community better is, I don't know, like create an upvote for radar bugs, and then be like, hey, once we reach a certain point, this is something that's affecting a lot of people, so maybe we all collectively need to file our radar. And I don't know how, you could say that Apple doesn't really look at radar, but I think they do. And if they saw, like, I don't know, 100 entries of the same problem, they might say, hey, that's really a problem. But I don't know how we would organize that at a community level. You could either create a good way or a bad way on that. But I think it might be something for us as a community to do, and we then could find out if, hey, collectively as a community, if we decide that something really is a problem and really affects what we do, if Apple is actually listening to us.
And until then, we can dupe on OpenRadar.
Yeah.
Instead of upvoting, we can just find our friends who work at 100,000 endpoint companies and send them our issues to file for them.
Yeah, I have one of my most hated comments, not a question. If you include impact data in your radars and Appleseed issues, et cetera, that helps a lot. If the fruit company thinks it's affecting 10 machines, they probably aren't going to care. If it's affecting 1 million, they'll definitely care.
Yeah, we've had a lot more success with radars when we put the number of devices and organizations that are impacted. It's harder coming from, if you're filing on behalf of your company, but those seem to get fixed faster.
We just need someone from Google and Facebook and stuff to stand up an employee so that we can all send our bug reports so they can file them for us.
Oh, that was Roger.
Yeah. Okay, favorite open source project. Current one in your face right now.
Mine it's probably going to either be Chef or Monkey, because those are the two that I use the most. They're pretty good, but there are a ton. iTerm is another one. It's pretty great.
I have been loving Greg's install macOS Pi script. It's been really nice to figure out what updates are full installers, and then it pulls down all the packages and compiles it correctly, rather than maybe getting a stub from the App Store. So that's been really useful.
Well, OS query. Short answer.
I'm going to go off topic and say generally cryptocurrencies and specifically Bitcoin.
I've been really liking Go. Just something new domain to work in, and for what we needed it for, it was amazing. I think Grube maybe got me out. Yeah. Converted me, count me as one.
What do you think we could do as a community to support open source projects,
Write blog posts. Yeah, but it was mentioned before. Write blog posts how you made some little progress. And it happens, but it could be double, triple the time of blog posts.
I think for project maintainers, trying to look at pieces of work that are not instrumental, deep code things that maybe newcomers would be intimidated to touch. So small documentation projects or little tiny code fixes to get them introduced to code bases, stuff like that. Being more inclusive to people who are new to the projects, I think. Thinking about those people.
John?
Contributing back.
Yeah, what are you going to contribute back?
Yeah, I work on install applications. But yeah, most of my time is spent trying to build a product that we're selling, so I don't have a lot of time for the open source, but also I'm learning how to program as I go here, so I'm not a developer from the beginning, so I'm kind of, I feel a lot of my code is still too shitty to contribute back, but I'll get there.
Never.
You know, we find projects and repositories that we need to expand just a little bit to work for our uses, and we'll do pull requests or merge requests. And a lot of times, you know, these aren't always strictly just community members running them. Sometimes it's open source project that's behind, a company's behind. But those requests will just kind of fall by the wayside. They're projects that maybe haven't been touched for a while, or have gotten to the level that the company sponsoring them is happy with, and there's just no one really actively maintaining it. So I think, and maybe I'm just out of the loop on this, but a more formal way to ask for help when you no longer want to maintain something, and hand it over to a party that's maybe interested in it, I think that would be useful for the ecosystem. Instead of me just nagging, looking at the commit history and nagging each person individually and saying, hey, it's been a month, hey, it's been 4 months, hey, it's been 5 months, please. Is anyone there?
Yeah, if somebody's not maintaining a project anymore, or if someone's not being paid to maintain a project, which is definitely not often, unless a big company, then that's sort of a dark side of our open source community, right?
Yeah,
projects die.
I've been on the other side, so I get it, but some sort of way to get outreach or help for something like that, I think would be good.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anything anybody wants to talk about they've heard in this community?
Hey, I just had a question about you guys, like with regard to dealing with failure. How do you guys best deal with failure, especially when it's very public?
I'll handle that first. One time I was trying to fix an XAN, and this is back when you get ghost mounts on the volumes. So the workaround for it was just to do an RM-RF on the volume. Turns out it wasn't ghost mounted. So that was, and it wasn't until I think it was about, 10 or 12 terabytes worth of data lost that I realized that I had that. And it turned out the day before, our whole backup system, the array had failed. So I collectively lost 12 terabytes worth of data. I thought about I can just blame it on gremlins. But I don't know. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. So owning it and kind of learning from it, and then trying to pass down those lessons that you've learned to other people, whether you work with them or in the community, I think is a good thing. But at the same time, it's like when you get life advice on something, like that is the worst person ever you could possibly date. You're never really going to listen to anyone who says that to you until you get through it and they're like, wow, I don't have 3 cars now, or something horrible like that. But I think there's a collective knowledge of you do any type of system administration, and you're going to be the one that is the problem between the keyboard and the computer, causing that mistake. But I think it's a point of humility that I don't think anyone's gone through any type of system administration where they haven't done something that they're just like, that was the wrong thing to do. On the other side, I once purposely destroyed a hard drive from a guy at the Genius Bar. And it turns out that the script for Boiler Room 2 was on it. He didn't have a backup. So I'm sorry about that, buddy. But anyway, I think he was fine. He went on to do other things. So, that's where we're at.
I don't know. I've been thinking about the question while he was answering, and I used to be in QA, and so I've let a few bugs through that were not good and impacted a lot of devices. And so that one's always rough because in QA you're always that last line, and when anything happens, they're always going to look at you, even though it's the developer put the bug in there, and the QA didn't test it or what. It's always the QA's fault. So I've been the bad guy a lot of times, but you just have to remember humans make mistakes, and you live and learn. So that's really all I have.
Right on.
Yeah, I would agree. It's natural that you make mistakes, and I personally try to just set back some time and just review what has happened and what I can improve in the future. And I reach out for advice from other people. Just tell them, hey, this happened, and so any idea what I can do better next time? That's it. Just get help from others.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can add. I've always tried to be brutally honest whenever I screw up, because it's only a learning opportunity. No matter what it is. My story is, or one of my stories is, has anybody heard of VAS or QAS, the Quest Authentication Services?
Yes.
Anyway,
It's a Dell product.
Yes.
Well, VMware.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Quest software, Dell. It's like the Active Directory plugin, but 10 times worse. So essentially, just pushed a bad version of it out to an entire fleet of 200 people. And the fun thing is, it'll install with behind the user and all that. But the next time they restart, can't log in. So the next morning. Because this company, for some reason, restarts their computers every day. No one, all 200 people, could not log in, and you couldn't do anything. And the eventual fix was to push the fixed version via Monkey, which eventually was a weird one, because the easiest way to get it fixed was to just turn your computer on, leave it at the login window, which was a weird one to communicate. But anyway, the point is, kill the entire company's productivity for like a day. It's just like, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Need to do better testing. And fortunately, they understood. Everyone makes mistakes, like you say.
Right. I don't know that I have a great story. Not that I haven't caused all sorts of pain for people in my life. But most of the pain I cause is for short 2 or 3 minutes where I'm freaking out and no one's noticed yet, and then we do a rollback or something. But in terms of failure, I find that for me personally, failure's amplitude is sort of based on what I consider, what I value in myself. And a lot of times the hardest failure is when I'm expecting something of me that isn't possible. Like I'll say, I value myself because I don't make mistakes, or I'm perfect at this, and I'm always going to be number one, or whatever it is. And that's just setting yourself up for failure. And so if I change it to say, hey, I value myself because I'm always going to have the mentality of trying to do the right thing by some group of people, or having the best intentions for this and not making the same mistake maybe 3 times in a row, then that's a lot easier. I think that when that oh shit moment happens, and you think, how, at least in my mind, I go, how do we dress this up, or how do we make this right? There's a vulnerable approach that can be taken, or there's this approach of defensiveness and finger pointing, or making it not your problem. And I find that, at least for me, failure is much easier to deal with from a vulnerable point of view, because I think people detect that and they can relate to that. So that's been my strategy for dealing with failure.
Ron, thanks guys. That's like perfect. Fail royally is my motto, and my worst failure was I wasted $20,000+ on a failed render for a video wall. Anyways, yeah.
Oh, I actually have a good failure story that rang a bell. So, first consulting company, we did voice over IP technologies, consulting, sold hardware stuff, and we got a customer that called in that had an urgent order, first-time customer, wanted like 40K in Cisco equipment. This was back in 2006, and we just started, and that was a really big deal. So we were going to give them like net 30, ship the stuff right out to them, and do some consulting work. So we ship the equipment out, we send the invoice, We get a call back 2 weeks later from the customer, and they say, hey, I got your invoice. I didn't order any equipment from you. I've never even heard of you. Or what? There's an identity theft situation, and they had us drop ship this Cisco hardware to this address of some resident, or I think it was just a vacated house right by an airport. And so someone had driven by, picked it up, gotten on a plane, and was gone. So that was, that cost our company probably about 20-something K, and we didn't have that money to spend, so that sucked. But we revised some policies, and it didn't happen again.
Sort of a related question. Have you been on a project where you just got to that point where you were totally jammed, or pick the adjective that you would like to put in there, and you knew that you needed help, but you weren't sure where to go for help or how to ask for help, and you had that moment? Have you had that moment, and if so, what did you do?
What would you tell Chris?
This was the same consulting company. We had all sorts of, I don't do consulting anymore too much. But this was, we had basically promised that we could pull something off that we couldn't. We were trying to do data replication across SANs. One was going to be up in San Francisco and one was in LA for basically replicating these VMs. And we got 2 months in, and it just wasn't reliable. It worked, 95% of the time, which is not a good percentage for data replication. So we, in that case, we just went back to the business owner and we said, hey, we can't pull this off, but we can try to do something much less, and we'll try to refund you money. And, I think he appreciated it. He was disappointed, but it worked out. It was just a matter of having an open line of communication, not, again, being vulnerable and being honest and saying, let's try to make this right the best we can, but we can't do what we agreed on. Just me.
Yeah, I got one. In previous jobs, I was the only IT person, so that meant somehow I managed everything from like air conditioning to the mail server. And I don't know if you've ever had your mail domain blacklisted. But I had that happen to me. I was working at an entertainment company, and the interactive department decided to send out mass emails from our domain. So, looked this up on Google, and it's just like, oh, there's just a consortium of people who blacklist domains, and you can submit a whitelisting, but you don't know when you're going to be whitelisted. And I didn't know anyone else who had the misfortune of managing an OSX mail server in this particular setup. So collectively, I had worked on it all day, and it was like 6 o'clock, and I was like, I can't do this. I got to get out of here. And the manager of the company, who was literally flipping out because he didn't have his email, I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometime tonight, maybe sometime tomorrow. We'll have email. I don't know. There's nothing I can do about it. There's probably some guy somewhere on the outside world who's like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know. Something like that. So I was just like, I have no clue when we're going to have our email service back, but we probably will. But there's nothing I can do about it now, so I'm going to go home. And I still had the job for another 2 years, so it worked out.
With no email.
Oh, no. I managed the email to the very bitter end. The company went out of business. That's what saved me from being a mail administrator.
How long did the mail come back?
It was back at about 11. We got blacklisted at 11 a.m., and then I submitted the whitelisting, I think about an hour and a half after I found out what it was, because I was clearly the mail expert. And yeah, it was about a 12-hour turnaround.
I think, so one story to just share on that is I was working at a large news company, and I just assigned to a new project, and I followed the wiki, and suddenly I started the script, and then it just removed the content from the current newspaper that was just like aggregated by the people in the newsroom. So and that was quite new there, but I had to phone up the person responsible and tell them, hey, just wipe all the data. I'm sorry, there was a mistake on our end here. And I think I was just 3 or 4 weeks in. And I had the backup of the people just like asking me to, hey, just you're assigned to this project. But they wanted me to make the call, so it was a bit rough. But the person on the other end was like, okay, we're safe, we know how to deal with this. So it was nice to meet the person, I think 1 year later, because they were at another location. It's like, and he remembered that case, but he's like not angry at all. So it's like, but it was a hard moment to pick up the phone and make the call, right? But it was the right thing to do that, and not like, oh, I knew, just shying away.
So thanks for sharing all your fail stories. That's awesome. Can you talk about how your company deals with those types of failures? Do you have a process, and what does that process look like?
My company?
Who are you, Henry? Who are you?
I mean, for us, it varies case by case. In some situations, contractually, we're obligated to disclose some of a problem if there was like a security breach or anything GDPR related with personal information. But generally, I'd say it's really case by case.
I haven't broken anything yet, so I don't know.
Literally broke my machine.
That's not my fault. To be fair,
on that note,
running a developer build.